Women are underrepresented in the ICT subsector, especially in top management and academic careers. Kenya is part of the global movement that is trying to bring on board more women into the ICT sector. What are we doing as a country to help in this agenda? This week on Inside Government, we're talking to the Chief Administrative Secretary, Maureen Mbaka. She's the CAS at the Ministry of ICT, Broadcasting and Telecommunications. Thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us here. So what are we doing to ensure that we mainstream more women and girls into the ICT sector?
Well, thank you for that question. Indeed, as you have stated, women do remain underrepresented, grossly so, in the ICT and STEM sectors, in the industries of ICT and STEM. And actually, global statistics show that only 30% of the ICT and STEM workforce is, occupied by women. So this is one of the realizations that informed the decision of having a Girls in ICT Kenya initiative, and this is at the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs. I do champion the initiative, being a young woman myself and the CAS in charge of ICT. So the initiative really aims to encourage and empower young women and girls to actively pursue careers in ICT and STEM.
Since Kenya signed the ITU protocol on championing for the inclusion of women and girls into the ICT, that was in 2011. What steps, concrete steps, have we taken, and what achievements have we made so far?
Indeed, the ITU does come in because what other factors that informed this initiative was the fact that ITU itself, being the UN agency specialized for ICTs, focused on, came up with having us, the whole world, observe a Girls in ICT Day every fourth Thursday in April annually. So this is a day that is observed worldwide, and since it's a day to create awareness on this gender digital divide and actually encourage girls to move towards ICT spaces, other than observing that day, that one day, the initiative aims to have activities around the year leading up to April. So I think this is one of the initiatives that we came up with. We just started in September of 2021, though we were observing the Girls in ICT Day as early as 2020. And some of the things that we've seen is that we've been able to have activities under the initiative. We've had what we called an online blogging challenge, where we encourage girls to submit blogs on various topics and use online tools to create content. We've had a cloud computing training, where we had girls receive certification on cloud computing, and we've also held e-mentorship webinars where we were able to connect girls to women who are established in the STEM and ICT sectors and really just encourage them to move towards this space. So these are some of the things that we've seen so far since September, and of course we are looking to scale this up.
And I know, as part of this agenda, the government has come up with various platforms, to address these. One of them being the digital literacy program, the Ajira program as well. How much more have they done, in enabling this agenda?
The government does have various programs in place aimed at the youth and preparing the youth for the digital space, so the youth at large. So as you stated, we do have the digital literacy program, which is in schools, just ensuring that young people from a young age are interacting with these digital devices. We do have, as you've stated, the Ajira digital program, which is a program aimed at the young people to prepare them for the future of work and for opportunities arising in the gig economy. So we have free training under the Ajira program on how to work online, how do you set up a profile online and start earning, from the opportunities in the gig economy. So really, I would say, I believe that when it comes to ensuring that there are more women in these spaces, deliberate and intentional, actions need to be in place. And indeed, for instance, under the Ajira digital program, as you've stated, we do look at, one of the factors we look at when we're looking at how the program is doing is actually how many women are taking up this space. So that's actually a factor that we're looking into under the Ajira Digital program. How many women are taking up this program? How many are going through the training and actually ending up working online? So we do have a target of having 70% of the young people online on Ajira Digital being young women. And so far we're at 50%, and it's because of these targeted actions where we actually hold, women digital series, where we actually tell them about the Ajira program, invite young women, reach out to young girls in that age gap. So we do have this intentional, actions in place to ensure that more women are taking up this space.
And what would happen once you get to 70% representation for women, and what will become of boys and men?
I think when we talk about, the Girls in ICT initiative, when we talk about, having more women in this space, we have to look at the fact that only 30% of the women in ICT, in STEM, only 30% of those in these sectors are women. So we, of course, need that affirmative action to reach parity. We would be better off if we had 50% in the sector. So really that affirmative action is required so that, in the end, we have more women role models in this space so that young girls can look up to this, sector and say, oh, I can also be in this sector. We need to, tear down that stereotype that this space is only for one gender. So that affirmative action is what we are looking at.
But how do you achieve, a 70-30 parity level, without breaching constitution, especially for men, whereby, both gender are equal before the law? And so all the policies, implemented by government are not supposed to favor one gender as opposed to the other.
I think, as you've stated, you're really looking at the 70% that we're looking at under the Ajira program. But really, again, I'll go back to my point of affirmative action, looking at this sector in particular, that only 30%, the whole world really is looking at the fact that there's gross underrepresentation of women in this sector. And we see that, in the end, we have that disparity in the sector. We have young girls not having role models in this area. So really, it's that balance of, having that affirmative action so that there are more women in this area. So let me speak for this particular sector and also the, the trends that we're seeing in the world as well.
Do you think societal norms, and practices, have been a hindrance, to the more inclusion of women in ICT and girls?
When we look at some of the barriers when it comes to having less women in this ICT space, one of the barriers that has been observed is for sure this, what you say, societal norms. There's that stereotype for sure. That's one of the major barriers, is that the stereotype that, this is too hard for girls, or girls shouldn't be in this space. So that we see that even when you take maybe digital computers to a school, you'll find more boys are signing up for that program. So for sure there's that stereotype, which is what we're trying to break really by having more women in this space. And I usually say it's a vicious cycle because the fact that we have less women in this space, young girls don't see women in this space, so then they shy away from this area, and then again, it's a cycle of less women in this space and young girls not seeing people in this space. So really, it's imperative that we have these intentional actions so that we can have more women in this space, really. How
do you nurture these, bearing in mind that, at the age of 15, on average, 0.5% of girls will only be interested in becoming IT specialists as opposed to, 4% for boys. So how do you inculcate this culture of more girls, opting for IT jobs at a tender age? They need to have this,
they need to see more women role models in these spaces. They need to see that, I can get to this place when it comes to, this career. That is why under the Girls in ICT initiative, we do focus as well on e-mentorship, where we have women who are established in this space. Just recently, we had a cyber security webinar. So we brought on board women who are established in the cyber security space, and they were able to interact with these young girls. And these young girls were, I think from what we got from their feedback was that they were inspired. They could at least see, that there are women in this space. So cybersecurity is actually a viable option when it comes to my career. So I think that's what we're trying to achieve.
What is the likely impact of having 50% of women being offline in a country whereby 55% of the population are women?
I think then that comes back to our efforts of, reaching out or actually ensuring that Kenya is connected. Of course, as a ministry, we do have several programs in place to ensure that, we are connected. This is now the digital divide, rather than the gender digital divide. There's this digital divide that we can speak of. And really, we have made great strides as a government when it comes to connectivity across the country. You can see that we have this national optic fiber backbone infrastructure program, under which more than 6,000 kilometers has been laid across the country to all the 47 counties to ensure connectivity. We also have the Universal Service Fund, which has the main aim of ensuring that we are reaching the unserved and underserved areas. So connectivity is, of course, a very big part of what we do at the ministry, what we do as a government to ensure that, we carry everyone along when it comes to connectivity.
What does it mean when we say that 50% of women are offline, or they are not captured in the digital space?
We do aim to have the whole country connected, yes. And just as you've stated, I think one of the main aims of when global statistics shine light on this disparity is the fact, just as you've said, 50% of the population in Kenya is women. 50% of over 50% is women, and also the world as well. They look at 50% of the population being women, at least 50%. So what it means is that as we have ICT driving economies, more and more economies are looking at ICTs as ways to leapfrog social and economic growth. Then we are having 50% of the economy not having these skills or not taking part in this growth, which is a loss to everyone. It's a loss to the globe that we have women not on board when it comes to ICT skills. Other than that, is the fact that even as we move forward, at least 90% of jobs have that digital component. So then that means then we have women not being able to contribute fully, to economic growth. So it leaves us, behind if we do not have all women on board.
And what would it mean, to have the 50% that are offline, bringing them online?
What it means, of course, then is the opposite of what I've said, is that we'll see that leapfrog in growth. We'll see that, in economic growth, we'll see that leapfrog, because then we'll have women having these skills, we'll have women in these spaces. And other than economic growth, maybe I can speak on the fact that we're having all these technologies coming up, all these technologies coming up every day, solving different issues. So then if we don't have women at the table when these technologies are being, developed, what then does that mean? It means that these technologies only they came up with these technologies with only one perspective. And a good example is a health app that it's quite famous, maybe I can say. It's a health app that came up with all this records. You could record your weight, you could record your blood pressure, all these health, records that you could keep on this health app. Other than menstruation, and this is something that 50% of the world, as I've said, 50% are women, 50% do need this, function, and the health app that was very famous did not have this. So this is just an example of why we require women and their perspectives on the table when it comes to ICT.
One of the components of, filling the digital gender divide is the development of the skills that are needed to use digital technologies. Would you outline some of the measures that you have done to ensure that this is achieved?
When it comes to digital skills, as stated, we do have the digital literacy program that is established in schools that has seen over 1 million devices, distributed to public schools. We've seen over 300,000 teachers trained on how to impart these digital skills upon young students. So this is one of the programs we have when it comes to digital skills. When it comes to, I've also spoken about the Ajira digital program, where we have trainers and mentors in place, and they really aim to, give free training to young people of the country on how to, utilize this online space or the gig economy to, combat unemployment. So we have various programs in place when it comes to digital skills.
How do you then reconcile what you are saying with the fact that, when it comes to transitional to secondary schools and tertiary institutions and universities, you have 20% less women, progressing, and this is whereby now you integrate with the ICT, at a deeper level. So how do you deal with that?
Then we are again going back to why we have this initiative in place, why we have the Girls in ICT Kenya initiative in place. And really our target when it comes to this initiative is young girls who are at the crossroads when it comes to choosing their career paths. So our target age group is 17 to 24, around that age. So those are the young girls who are just about to make their decision when it comes to careers. And then we'll have these women, at least make a decision on taking the ICT or STEM path, and then we'll have more women in the space.
Do you think the Kenyan job landscape is helping in this initiative?
Indeed, just as I've stated that the initiative is quite new, the one that the Girls in ICT initiative that we have. And perhaps if I can speak on, having more women role models and all that, I believe even as a globe, we have that move towards having more women in this space. I believe one of the things that the workforce has seen is that statistics do show that companies that have that gender parity, that they have that 50-50 balance, they actually perform better. This is the studies that have shown this. So I believe that there's that awareness that is coming, though we're moving slowly, there's that awareness, raising awareness, and then I think we do have companies looking at actually having more women in this space.
And what is the role of the private sector in this agenda?
Just as I've stated, companies should recognize that, it's imperative to have this gender balance. It's imperative to have that the women at the table when it comes to making decisions, when it comes to, coming up with these technologies, just as I've stated. So really, I think that's the role that they can play. Is having this perhaps policies in place to have more women at the table, intentional and deliberate actions, and giving women a chance to grow in this space as well.
When you look at the Kenyan society, almost 60% of Kenyans, access the internet through their mobile phones, and then you have a situation whereby women are 10% less likely to have a mobile phone, as opposed to men. So how do you also, hasten the process of having more women owning mobile phones that can access internet?
I think then I'll just go back to, connectivity, ensuring that, there's that access to these devices. I think that's an area that we do look at as a government as well. And having more women have...
Well, the gadgets are there in the market.
Yes.
But of course, in a country whereby, men earn more than women again. So you also women don't have too much power, when it comes to buying smartphones as opposed to men. Is there anything that we can do, to help more women acquire and access smartphones?
Creating that awareness and on what opportunities lie what opportunities lie in that space, how then it would benefit them to have these devices. I believe even with the pandemic, what came about is that women were disproportionately affected when it came to loss of jobs. And at that time, we actually saw the digital space as a way that they could, alleviate this. So I think just creating that awareness around that area, around the opportunities in the digital space, is one of the ways that we could increase that.
Well, leveling the playing field in the sense that, there are out of 10 ICT specialists in government, 6.5 are men. So which means that it's only 3.5% are women. So how do you ensure that the playing field is leveled for everyone?
Mr. Kimani, we're going back to what we said about affirmative action, about such initiatives as the Girls in ICT initiative, deliberately looking at these statistics when we have our programs out there on ICT skills. So all these are actually, that's the end goal, to level the field, as you say, to have that parity, that 50-50 parity.
As a person from a legal background and a person, who is trained to have a legal mind, are there some legal instruments that we can put in place to ensure that more women are adopted into the ICT sphere? I
think I wouldn't want to jump the gun and speak of any policies. I am in government, and we do work we do have one government approach when it comes to these things. So I would not want to jump the gun, but really, for now, let me say that we have these initiatives in place, and even within our programs, we have this, this as a factor that we look at. So I think for now, that's what I can say.
Is there any initiative, by the Ministry of ICT that brings together women in ICTs, so that they can create a pool of mentors?
Indeed, I think that's what we're trying to do with the Girls in ICT initiative. We have had in the past brought on board, our very own, women in the sector that we have here at the ministry. We had the acting Director General at the CA, Madam Masi Wanjao, come on board one time. So we do have these women so graciously, offering their time to come and speak to girls when we do have webinars. So yes, this is something that we aim to do as well.
Have you realized any fruits of this kind of an initiative yet?
Though we've just begun, I stated that one of the activities we've had is the cloud computing training, where we brought on board our partners. Of course, we do work with the Konza Technopolis, one of our parastatals, and we also brought on board Huawei Women in Technology, and they so graciously offered, out of the girls who came for the cloud computing training, they offered spots for their certification in cloud computing. So I believe we had at least 30 girls, taking up this cloud computing exam and actually getting certification in the end. So I think that's one of the success stories I can say that we've had, that these girls walked away with certification in cloud computing.
In the past, we have seen a deliberate effort by the ministry to try and create or encourage more ICT hubs, at the constituency level, at the county level, even at the national level. And we have also seen, partnership with different ICT hubs. But when you look at, startups, only 70% of startups are owned by women. Only 29% of startup CEOs are women, which tells you that even this area, it requires significant effort. So how do we deal with that disparity?
One of our activities going forward will be to bring on board these ladies who actually own startups, because we do look to having such partnerships to at least speak to the innovation ecosystem as well. Again, this would be one of the ways that we reach young girls and tell them that this is a space that you can thrive in, and I'm happy to see more women move into the startup space.
Is there a deliberate effort, even by your ministry, to try and create, kind of a mentorship program for women who are in the startup stratosphere?
I mean, when I speak of the Girls in ICT initiative, I did speak of having more women in the ICT and STEM sectors. So other than ICTs, of course, there's innovation, there's science, mathematics. So really, this would be, as I said, one of the areas that we'd be happy to look into and have more, women in startups come in and speak to young girls.
This is not something that can only be achieved by your ministry. It requires, the concerted efforts of all government and the private sector. Which other government departments are you working with?
We have just begun, so we are, of course, again, I wouldn't want to, jump the gun, but of course, yes, we do have that one government approach when it comes to initiatives. And we look forward to working with more partners in the government when it comes to driving the initiative as well.
Like, for example, when you look at, students who are pursuing ICT or STEM courses, in Kenya, the number stands at 19%, which is significantly low, compared to our peers like South Africa. So, as in the Ministry of ICT, what are you doing in collaboration with the Ministry of Education to ensure that this number is upscaled?
We, as I said, we do have that one government approach when it comes to our programs. So when it comes to, as you say, digital skills, of course, we do have the Ministry of Education on board when it comes to the digital devices themselves, creating the content for these digital devices. We do have the KICD coming on board. So yes, we do have, we do work together when it comes to such programs.
As we come to the close of this interview, I'll be looking forward at a time when probably we shall have, ICT centers that are fully and wholly dedicated for women and girls.
Though, as you've stated, we do have this constituency innovation hubs, or what we call Ajira Youth Empowerment Centers, all across the country, and they are aimed at the youth of Kenya. They're spread out in various constituencies, and therefore all the youth, of course. But when we do look at programs such as the Girls in ICT initiative, or when we have Ajira trainings where we invite young girls, we'd be more than happy to have young girls using the facilities to, reach out to these programs.
Finally, for the women and girls, who are watching this program and listening to you, and they're still in that chasm of indecisiveness on what courses to pursue, or, what professional course they should take, what would be a message? I
believe my message would be really the fact that we should all realize as young women that this is where the world is moving towards the digital space. As I've stated, 90% of jobs will then have a digital component. So the women who are on the fence, as you said, should, the young women and girls out there, do, go ahead and, grab these opportunities in the ICT space. And a good place to start would be to, join our various activities under the Girls in ICT initiative. Other than that, do find out about, the nearest Ajira center to you. You can go there and find out about how you can learn how to work online, how to earn something online. So I would urge young women out there to, don't be afraid, go out and get these spaces, because they're there for you.
Chief Administrative Secretary Maureen Mbaka joining us on Inside Government this week to discuss how to close the gender digital divide, and of course you have heard it from her. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you for your time. Good afternoon.